Hello, team, and welcome back to another episode on the Live Perform Compete podcast. Today, I am joined by Isabel Wolf, Business Development Manager at Coastal Fitness. We've been sat next to each other all day, but we decided to head home and jump on a Zoom call for our podcast today. Our podcast today is switching things up a little bit. We are here to talk about business. And when I say business, specifically talking about the Coastal Fitness journey. I guess to kind of introduce Izzy, even though she doesn't need introductions because you've heard her on previous podcasts, but Izzy was brought on just over, it's been about a year now, hasn't it, Izzy, in terms of an actual employee of Coastal Fitness?
Yeah, almost a year in November.
Almost a year in November. So Izzy came on initially as our marketing manager. She has now flown up the ranks and is now our business development manager and is part of an operations team which seems to keep on growing kind of every few months. So I guess from Izzy, she's kind of come in from a pretty typical CrossFit gym background to now coming to Coastal, where we've kind of taken a slightly different approach to running our business. And actually, this was Izzy's idea. Izzy kind of brought the idea forward to me and said, "Hey, we should actually talk about fitness and sorry, not fitness. We should talk about business, business related to the fitness business, and talk about the Coastal Fitness journey and what we've done and what we've changed. And hopefully, there's something for you guys to take away from this." So, anyway, I'm waffling as always. Izzy, help me out here.
Okay, hi. Thanks for that introduction. Yeah, so I think when you're in your own business, it's hard for you to see how well you're doing or how much different things you are doing compared to other people. And I think coming from an outsider's perspective and just being immersed in Coastal, I've definitely grown a lot and seen a lot of different things and seen a lot of different ways that you guys do things. And it's just shown a lot of light to why Coastal is so successful. And I think that people who start a gym or who are interested in getting into a fitness business usually do it out of passion, right? They love fitness themselves. And for them, it's like a no-brainer. Why not mix passion and business to have a successful career? But where I think a lot of people don't get it right is that a product or passion is one thing that drives a business, but if it's not successful in the back end, in its core, it's not actually going to be something successful, which I think Coastal has done a really amazing job. And like I told you in the beginning of this podcast, in the very beginning, you were able to share your story of where it all started. And now a lot of people see where it is. Like all the new people who have joined us in our community know where it is. But I think the middle area where all the growth actually happened and where all the mistakes and challenges happened, not many people know about. And so I think it's a great opportunity for you to share to people who are either starting a gym or who are in the beginnings of it, or even people who are in it but aren't comfortable and are still making mistakes, to just share what you've been through to help and inspire other people.
Cool. Much better introduction. You should have just started this episode.
No. Anyways, so I wanted to start just by you refreshing our memories of where you started, and then let's go through it. Like, it doesn't have to be year by year, but like in chronicle order of how you started to grow your team, because everyone starts as one person, right? And you started as you with your car at Coastal Fitness. And I want to know what happened and what caused the growth and what inspired you to grow, and like every time you hired someone, what was the purpose?
Okay, cool. It was funny because you were talking about like businesses start through passion, and that's exactly how Coastal Fitness started. It was I had just made the decision that I wanted to become a fitness coach, personal trainer, group coach, class, whatever you want to call it. We just referred to it as personal trainers back then, but I knew I wanted to be coaching people in health and fitness. And maybe to go back on something I talked about in one of the very first podcasts was, I was given the option: do I climb the ladder in a big commercial gym, like a Pure Fitness that we have in Hong Kong, or like a Fitness First that people around the world might associate more with, work my way up, and then eventually maybe break off and do my own thing? Or do I kind of go at it alone and set up a company, or just become Ed Haynes a coach and just see what I can achieve? And I don't really know what the catalyst was as to why I decided to go solo, but it just seemed like the right thing to do. Obviously, with that comes a lot of challenges, and probably the biggest challenge being that I have no mentors. I don't have anyone to learn from. I don't have anyone to model anything from. So I think a lot of what's brought Coastal Fitness to where it is today is just a ton of errors and a lot of mistakes and a lot of making poor decisions, but learning and reflecting from them. I really see, sorry to go off tangent, but I see so many businesses now who achieve so much more than we've achieved in such a short amount of time. I think it's actually quite amazing. And I think, now as myself becoming a business owner in another business, which is a bit of a passion project, and, doing this the second time round, starting out something brand new has been completely different. Just because of all the experience and knowledge I have from all the mistakes I've made over 11 years. But okay, let's get back to it. So it began just as myself. So Coastal Fitness was just me. I remember building my website, and on the Meet the Team page is what it was called. And on Meet the Team, obviously you click on it expecting to see a big archive of different thumbnails of different coaches, and it was just me. Very, very large image of me as the only member of the team. And I remember my description was something like founder, managing director, and head coach. I don't know why I wrote head coach because I was the only coach. But anyway, the goal really was, okay, well, how busy, how much can I grow? I had no idea. I remember putting my website and making it go live, and literally sitting there at my kitchen table in my parents' house, staring at my mobile phone, waiting for it to ring for someone to ask me to coach them. And actually, I think it happened in the first day of going live. And funnily enough, that was Geraldine, who's still our client. I still coach her now, 11 years later. She called me and said, yeah, interested in coaching. Anyway, that was my very first client. And then from there, like every young, enthusiastic, hungry coach, it was just, I want more clients. I want to get as many clients as I possibly can, which obviously meant that I took on way too much. Put into perspective at the time, I was still playing rugby. I was contracted to do that. So there was an expectation for me to be, a professional player, which I really couldn't give 100% to, because I was saying yes to every client that wanted me to coach them. And then, within probably about 9 months, I got to a point of, I just couldn't take any more clients on. What did my business look like then? It was, I basically bought a 1997 convertible Volkswagen Cabriolet, which is the sickest car. I had a Bosu ball, a lot of resistance bands, a lot of fake TRXs from China, a lot of resistance bands, and I would drive around Hong Kong to people's houses, to tennis courts, to basketball courts, to schools, to personal training studios, and I would just coach people all day. And it was the dream. And actually, for that first year, I worked 7 days a week, didn't take a day off, didn't take a holiday. And that actually continued. Actually, that was more than a year. I think that was almost 18 months before I took my first day off. That would include being extremely sick from being burnt out, extremely sick from being hungover after going out with the boys after a rugby game, but still a refusal to ever take a sick day. And really it got to the point where I just couldn't take anyone else on. I couldn't take any more clients on. And, I thought, well, this is probably the time that I need to look to bring someone else on and add them to the team. I think, again, to put it into context, at the time, business is amazing now. We have a team in the Philippines who helps us with this podcast, for example. They help us with marketing. They can basically do everything. I've only just learned about this concept of having a virtual assistant probably in the last 9 to 12 months. But back then it was just me. So, I would, part of every day was responding to all the emails that would come through. It was managing the website and making sure that was up to date. It was doing all the accounting. So that was sitting down, and it wasn't an Excel spreadsheet. I had a little black book that my dad gave me, as I would handwrite everything. And then all the receipts, I gave every client a handwritten receipt that they would, then keep, and I would photocopy and I would keep in this folder. It was managing all the expenses of the business. It was doing an insurance for myself. It was writing my own contracts. I actually learned in that first 6 months of business more than I did in 4 years of university. And I really mean that. And I have to say, a testament to my parents for being such amazing mentors in those early days. But, and essentially in terms of from a personnel standpoint, that was it. Just couldn't really take anyone else on. So it was just serendipitous in terms of timing. Ant had just finished university, and as many people who know myself and Ant, we tend to follow in each other's footsteps quite a lot. When I say follow in each other's footsteps, I mean he follows in my footsteps for most of it. And Ant kind of came back from university, and it was a really simple conversation. It was like, I could tell he thought what I was doing was cool. I was my own boss, and I was getting to wear fitness clothes every day, and I was spreading what we both love to do as young adults, which was train and exercise. And so I said to Ant, hey, come and shadow me for a week. And so Ant basically shadowed me for a week. We'd drive around in the car together, and he'd just sit and watch my personal training sessions. I would try and educate him on what I was doing, but truth be told, I didn't really know what I was doing, to be honest. And I think it was literally after a week, I said, you got the job, you start on Monday. And so Ant had just finished university, shadowed me for a week, had some pretty terrible mentorship. And I was like, you got the job. And so one became two. And roughly at the same time, I actually, one of my very close friends, Andy Bratsanos, who's now one of my clients of Coastal Fitness, he was, he'd been doing some coaching in Canada, a very different type of methodology under a guy called Peter Twist. He just moved back to Hong Kong, and he saw what I'd done with Coastal in a year, thought it was really cool. And I would proudly wear my Coastal Fitness uniform everywhere that I went. So for that first year, I had kit made. I had a polo shirt, I had a sleeveless shirt, I had a t-shirt, and I did not take that Coastal Fitness stash off for the first 12 months. So everyone knew that I had a company. I even had a Coastal Fitness hat. My phone case was Coastal Fitness. I had Coastal Fitness stickers plastered all over my car. Like you couldn't get away from the fact that, oh, there's that guy who runs that fitness business with a terrible logo, which was a sun rising out of a bent barbell. So at the same time, Andy just returned from Canada, and he was interested in coaching, and similar to Ant, asked him to shadow. I don't think it was a week this time. I think I asked him to shadow for probably 2 days, and didn't see what his capabilities were at all, but Nate, you got the job. And so in a very short amount of time, from one, we became three.
And then did you have contracts and salaries at this point?
We had contracts. Yes, we did. We had salaries. We were all working on commission-based salaries. Oh God, so many memories coming back to me. It's hilarious. I mean, I would handle all the payroll. So essentially how payroll was done, and this is just like a typical first year organizational business, is that the expectation was that Andy and Ant had to collect the money from their clients when a payment was due. Now, of course, half the time money wasn't collected. In fact, most of the clients had no idea what package they were on, how much a package cost, and where they were at with the sessions. And Ant Haynes, 10 years later, still hasn't learned how to keep track of his client sessions, which you can testify.
Amen.
So, I mean, that all started at day one. So, coming to the books every month, it would just be like, right. It was based all on trust. So what we would all do is write down all the hours that we did coaching on an Excel spreadsheet, hand it into me, and I would just pay them. Never really looked.
Without money that you've collected.
Nope, without money that I collected. The only thing I would really look at is I would look at our bank statement every month and just make sure we weren't losing money. As long as the figure looked kind of the same as the previous month, and this is genuine, as long as the money looked kind of the same, like it wasn't drastically off, I was good. I was happy. And that was it. That was Coastal Fitness Accounting 101. And those are some pretty tough times because essentially doing the job of probably what we now have a team of, how many do we have in our ops team now? 5, 6? 5 full-time operations staff. That was the job of just myself for the first four years of business.
So I can probably blame Ant's lack of PT scheduling skills because he wasn't trained from the very beginning.
I mean, yeah, I could take ownership for that. I can take ownership for a lot of flaws in that man. But hey, I mean, if he's not going to take it, I'll take it. But no, for sure, there was definitely no formal training. It was very laissez-faire. It was just show up, do your thing, and let's have lunch together every day. So we would find a time every single day as a team to sit down and talk about our clients, and essentially that's where a lot of our, I guess, professional development started. We would train every day together in the football club gym mostly. So there was that aspect of camaraderie and like shared suffering and like experimentation that always happened together, which is very fortunate when you don't actually have a gym, to have somewhere like the football club, which it was for us, which is basically, for those that don't know, it's a sports club. We all played for their sports team, so they had this gym that we could use. And so yeah, many an hour every single day was spent just us three sitting down together and talking about training philosophies, or sharing things we've been trying and what worked, what didn't work. I always have been someone who's been very into self-development. So I was probably the main one going out and learning all these courses, but I loved it because it meant I could bring it back to the team and share what I'd learned, and like together we would start to incorporate it into our training methodology. Where are we at now? So that's, I guess, that kind of format of business existed probably for about 2.5 years before we then hired Babs. So
And
Babs,
what was the need to hire Babs? Like, why did you decide to hire someone else again?
Yeah, so it was the same thing. So for Babs's hiring was actually a bit different. It wasn't a hiring out of necessity like it was when I hired Andy and Ant. It was a hiring because just thought she was a good chick, and I thought she would be a really good addition to the team. I think a lot of our hires in those days came from people who were already clients of the organization. In fact, and I'm sure we'll get to it later, a lot of our coaches now and staff members were all originally Coastal Fitness members or clients of some sort. So, Babs was a member of our SMAC program, which is basically it's a terrible name because SMAC is obviously a slang word for heroin, but we came up with the name SMAC, which stood for Strength, Mobility and Conditioning, which was essentially our first group introduction to CrossFit training. This would have been 2009, 2010. We would basically, get everyone to meet down in an open space. We'd bring sandbags, TRXs, and kettlebells, and we would do like WODs. We would do CrossFit workouts as to what, based on what we thought CrossFit was, and that's what we did. And Babs was one of those members. She showed up every session, wearing her Vibram 5-finger toes. I'll never forget. I'll never forget because we all started wearing Vibrams for about 6 months. And it was more like, Babs was a personal trainer at the time. She was doing some coaching. Again, had never seen her coaching. Didn't know if she was actually any good at it, but she was keen. She was passionate. She was a great representative as an athlete because she was, the Hong Kong hockey team captain. And so, I sat down for lunch with her one day and just said, how would you feel about continuing your coaching but being a part of Coastal Fitness? And she was like, yeah. Did we professionalize anything at that point? No. Payments were still done on a coffee shop table in the football club every month, based fully on trust. Money still wasn't collected, but money wasn't going down the bank. So, it was happy days. So I guess, that was essentially the rise in the early days of Coastal Fitness before we ever even had a gym. The four of us were traveling around and coaching people. We were super passionate. We were 100% burning the candle at both ends. It was maybe a Sunday as a rest day. Otherwise, it was, working 6 days a week, starting early mornings, finishing late at night, and just doing as much as we possibly could. And I guess that will bring us up to our next chapter, which is then when we thought about finally moving into a gym.
Let's go through there. So did you guys think of moving to a gym just because of the opportunity, or because you guys were full, because you wanted to grow? And when you were looking at finally opening your own space, what were the first things that you decided were necessities in order to make this work, compared to where you guys were now, where it was just everything based on trust and go with the flow?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, when the gym opened, it was a shit show. Again, like it was a complete shit show. I sometimes reflect back and think, how are we where we are today with the way that we ran that organization, probably for the first 3 years of owning a gym. So anyway, backtracking is that we had started to dabble with CrossFit. Andy, one of my coaches, he'd stumbled across CrossFit.com, started experimenting with some of the workouts, and actually started getting some pretty amazing results there. I've talked a lot about my initial perceptions of CrossFit and how I thought it was just the stupidest thing ever. Went against all of the principles I'd ever learned as a coach. Constant variance, high intensity, functional movements just didn't jive with me at all. So for me, my interest in CrossFit came purely out of interest in trying to understand it more, because my initial perception was that we shouldn't be doing this, and this doesn't make sense. But lo and behold, over about a year, myself and Andy definitely experimented with it a lot more than I did. I didn't as much because I had some massive movement limitations. I had a lot of shoulder operations, knee operations, so things like snatching and handstands were just so foreign to me that it was just my learning curve in terms of trying to pick up these movements was a lot slower. And I didn't like the fact that I was a lot worse than both Andy and Ant. And so that became my excuse. Very, very fixed minded of me. That became my excuse as to why I didn't want to do CrossFit. But what we then started to create was this outside of our one-on-one clients was this outdoor community, which was called SMAC, which became massive. It was also at a time where outdoor boot camps and outdoor training was a really big thing in Hong Kong. Boot camp, which the franchise from the US was brought to Hong Kong by one of the fitness coaches out here, and that blew up to be something huge. There was another thing called Circuit 25, I believe it was, who were doing outdoor boot camps as well. And so basically, there were three main players: Coastal Fitness, Circuit 25, and Boot Camp were the three biggest outdoor fitness providers. And we started to build, I throw Bikini Fit into there as well. But, we started to build this massive following. And before we even opened our gym, we had probably over 300 clients working with us every week in both one-on-one and group training formats. We ran the SMAC games, which is basically like our version of the CrossFit games, which was like programmed purely using kettlebells and TRXs and sandbags. There was an individual and a team competition. And this is before like CrossFit was even a thing in Asia. And we ran this outdoor at the football club, had afterwards, beers and celebrations and trophies. And it was like awesome. But, that was a massive...
Hold on.
Yeah.
But at this point, are you still handling the finances?
Everything.
And the memberships and
everything,
the scheduling? You're still doing this at this point with 300 people.
Everything.
That's insane.
So basically what it was that we would all go down. We would, I would run some SMAC sessions, Andy would run some SMAC sessions, Ant would run some SMAC sessions. And like, no one's doing online transfers at this point. Everyone's bringing cold, hard drug money down to their sessions. And we would basically stand there at the start of each session, with a register. And we basically take everyone's names and we would call out if they owed cash or not. So it'd be, Isabel, you owe $500. Sorry, Ed, don't have $500. No problem, I'll chase you next week. Johnny, you owe $250. Oh, here you go, Ed, I've only got 400. Do you have change? No, I don't, but I'll just take that and I'll give you change another week. That was basically how it went down every week. So in our weekly team meetings, I would sit at a coffee shop and I'd have these large bags of cash dropped on the table. And it would be like, here you go, here's our SMAC money. I'm like, well, do we have registers? Nope. Do we know who owes what? Nope. Okay, so basically SMAC existed for 3 years purely based on honesty. It was if a client felt they should be paying, then they would pay. And often they would say, hey, I'm pretty sure I haven't paid in about 10 sessions. Should I be paying? No, don't worry about it. It's all good. Unless you want to, of course. They're like, well, I kind of feel like I could. Well, I mean, we don't have a register, so, whatever. And essentially, that was, yeah. So, yeah, it was a lot of work for sure. It was definitely a lot of work, very stressful times. But I guess, going back to this idea of running things based purely on passion, that's exactly where we were. Like, it was so exciting. There was just so much you were learning. And, we were creating this thing that was really organic and spontaneous. And like the crowds were growing and like the participation was growing, and we started creating merchandise that people would wear around Hong Kong. And, I sourced these terrible plastic bottles from China that would last about 3 uses before they'd start dripping everywhere. But everyone had the plastic bottle and the drawstring bag of this rising sun coming out of a bent barbell. And so, the reason for the gym was that, we all started getting really interested in CrossFit by this point. We've been experiencing dabbling for a year. We've been running this outdoor group program using the principles of CrossFit, which was really, really popular. We're doing something very different to a lot of the other circuit training things, programs, because we had structure. We had structure and we were coaching people, teaching them how to actually do swings, how to actually do squats. And, when they weren't able to do it, we could personal train them to help bring them up to speed to be able to do the movements effectively. And so, it was kind of at this point, the conversation was, wouldn't it be awesome if we could actually have our own gym to offer our own prescription of fitness? Because unless it was outside, and, we live in a tropical climate where like we have thunderstorms and typhoons and a lot of rain, and that would never stop us running our sessions. We'd be doing smack sessions, swinging kettlebells in a red rainstorm. It would go ahead no matter what. But if it wasn't there, it was taking people to PT studios, which meant like there were no rings, so we couldn't do muscle ups. There were really no pull-up bars that you could do anything proper on. There weren't barbells where you could do Olympic lifting. All the things that we really wanted to do, we couldn't. And so really the idea of opening a gym came out of frustration from, being at the mercy of these personal training studios and being at the mercy of having limited equipment and doing things outside. So, I spoke to a few other coaches at the time in Hong Kong and said, like, why is it that no one's opened up their own gym here? Like, why? These guys had been in the personal training studio game for 10 years and had no interest in moving. And I'd been there for 3-4 years and was already like, I need to get out of here. And, everyone said, don't open a gym in Hong Kong. It's like, it will be your worst nightmare. You're going to lose money. You're going to hemorrhage cash. Real estate here is the highest in the world. You just won't be successful. And to be honest, it wasn't that I wanted to prove those people wrong, but it was just more that I just had a good feeling about what we were doing. We already had a bigger following than everyone else. And it was like, it just seemed like the logical next step. Now, in hindsight, was it logical next step? Probably not. Logical next step probably would have been hire an accountant, hire a general manager, hire people who can help improve the organization as it was, which was a freelance training organization. And, I think alone we could have made a lot more money, market ourselves a lot better than what we did. And, probably just establish a much greater brand in those early days. Because bear in mind, this is already 4 years of existence. Like, that's quite a long time to still be a company who's losing cash because, they go based on you're not collecting and you're not tracking anything. That's a lot of time, not really pushing forward. But why? Well, part of that reason is because I was just doing everything. I didn't have the time, nor did I acknowledge that it was important to make the time to actually learn and develop my skills in each of the areas. So I really didn't improve any of them. Probably just got worse, to be honest, because the busier that I got, the less time I had to do those things. And let's be honest, all I wanted to do was coach people. That's what I wanted to spend 90% of my time doing. And so I would always, begrudgingly get the work done, but it was never done with passion or interest, which, and the part of that was, I was like, who would be interested in doing accounts? I now know there are people called accountants who actually love working with numbers. So who'd have thought? So yeah, in hindsight, wasn't probably the right step, but at the time it just seemed like the right step. And so, I remember going to my parents and saying, okay, I want to open a gym now. I think it's time. My mum had been training with me as a part of Coast Village, one of my very first members. So she could see just the impact that we were making in Hong Kong and the community we were building. So she definitely knew that what we were doing was good and that there was potential in it. But, also testament to them, they just said, yeah, like, do it. And so we did it. We started reaching out to some property agents and said, we're looking for a training space and we want to have a gym. And it was actually coincidentally a friend of mine who was one of my teammates, Ricky Chuk. He was also in the process of opening up a Muay Thai studio, and he was looking for space. He was a fairly savvy businessman. He'd set up a lot of successful businesses. And he said, what are your thoughts on going half in on a space? You take one half, I take one half. And I think actually, given the skill set and the knowledge I had at that time, that was probably a massive blessing for us. You know, going into a business with someone who actually knew what they were doing, someone who knew about negotiations and leases, knew about contracting, knew about insurance, and, you know, just had a lot of contacts in the right places, really made that transition super easy for us. All we had to do was really basically focus on our side of the business, which is basically how we want to lay out the gym, was pretty much the only thing we cared about. Ordering equipment, which was like the most exciting thing ever. Finally, we're going to have a proper barbell and bumper plates and pull-up bars. And we're going to have our own sled, and we're going to have Olympic rings, and we're going to have this Airdyne bike that everyone's talking about. You know, like, it was so exciting doing that. And that's all we geeked out over. When it comes to a new gym, that's the only thing we cared about, was like, what equipment are we going to have? So shall I continue?
Yeah, so then at this point, now you have your own facility, you're a team of 4. At what point, and then you said you were lucky because you had someone who could handle the business side for you at this time, right? Which is really important, because you need someone who can do the legals, who can do the contracts, who can do the negotiations and all that. That's so key when you're opening your own space. And so luckily you had that. But at one point, did you realize that you needed someone for your own, who had your back, who not necessarily was just in the space? And I think what's really important with what you just said is that you are the founder and you knew that, but your skill set was not in these areas. And so at one point, did your mindset change and be like, this is not what I'm passionate about, this is not what I'm good at, I need someone who's going to look after me and let me do what I'm good at and what I actually want to do?
Yeah. Okay, well, that point hasn't arrived still. We've got a few years to get to before I get to that point. So actually, the funny part is probably one of my best friends ever was back from, bless him, he won't mind me talking about this. He just lost his job as a ski instructor in Switzerland, and, you know, we went for a night out to catch up, and we were sat in the subway probably about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I was eating my tuna melt with cheese and all the jalapenos, which was my go-to, still is. And I was sat down with my best mate, and he was talking about just lost his job, and that, you know, it was tough times for him. He didn't really know what to do. And so, bless him, we talk about this day all the time, so no qualms in it. In my drunken state, I said, Fulton, I'm opening up a gym in 1 month's time. How would you like to be my front desk staff? Basically, my operations manager. And he was like, really? I'm like, yeah, you're hired. So just in typical Ed Haynes fashion, like every other hire, there was no interview process. It was, you're a friend of mine and I really like you. I want you to be a part of my organization. And, you know, by this point, this is our 5th employee now. Every employee had been hired because it was someone I knew, someone that I liked, and someone that I could trust. I had no idea if Fulton had any skill set in talking to people. I had no idea if he had any skill set in anything, because, to be honest, I didn't even know what front desk staff had to do. I thought, you know, you sit at the desk, you hand out towels and you hand out locker keys, and that's your job. So Fulton takes a job, of course, because he's been handed this job, part of a new business, and he's kind of like the front man of the organization. And you know what? The next year is just probably the steepest learning curve, not just in business, but in life, that I probably ever had. You know, myself and Fulton, you know, together. So it's a lot of those job responsibilities I actually still held on to. The only thing I probably relinquished was we shared accounting between the two of us, and Chris would take over the email correspondence. So, you know, essentially now you have a lease of 150,000 Hong Kong dollars, which, if you know, if we're in US dollars here, we're talking 12,000 US a month. You've got five employees, all of which are between 23 to 26 years old. Never run a business, any of us, never owned a business. Your front desk man has never worked behind a front desk, never done accounts, never done anything that's in his job description. And here we are, you know, running a gym, you know, charging some of the highest prices in Hong Kong relative to other group training facilities, and are doing it purely based on passion and the fact that we have our own playground now. That's all ours. And, That was the first year of Coastal Fitness. It was, every week was just sitting down with these numbers and these spreadsheets. And to be honest, like, it was more about pushing them to the side because I just didn't really want to know. I wasn't really willing to put in the time and energy to learn about these things, because I thought, you know what, as long as I check that bank account and that number's not changing too much, I'm happy. And you
was
know what?
that the case?
Yeah, it's funny that, we were able to, in that first year, 2 years of existence, that our cash flow always stayed healthy and always stayed positive. We were working our asses off, like a lot of gym owners probably do, coming in, coaching a 5 a.m. class, 6 a.m. class, 7 a.m. class, trying to find a dark corner to sleep in for an hour and a half where it wasn't too loud, wake up, and then coach all the way through probably till 8 or 9 p.m. And that was, every day between four of us. Fulton there wasn't morning and night shifts. Fulton was the day shift. So Fulton would come in at 6 a.m. and he would probably leave at 7, 8 p.m. every single night, eating his lunch at front desk. And it was just mayhem. And, it really wasn't until probably about a year in where my parents reached out to me and said, Ed, I think it would be really beneficial to you to have us sit on your board of directors. So obviously my first question was, what is a board of directors and why do I need it? So, essentially a board, Ed, is like, a group of neutrals who just have an invested interest in the organization, not necessarily invested through money, but just, want the best for the organization. And we have business experience. We think we can help you. All right. That seems like probably a good logical next step. You've both run businesses before and you're old, so you must have experience more than I do. So come on in. So, we sit down for our first board meeting. And I still remember that first board meeting was just, where is this? Where is that? Show me this, show me that. And we just couldn't answer anything. Poor Fulton, bless him, he learned how to do accounts. He learned how to read spreadsheets and balance sheets. He learned how to do Adobe Illustrator. Oh, like that guy picked up, I reckon, all of his life skills in that first year of running Coastal Fitness. And, it was, and, reflecting back on my character and my personality at the time, like I was very defensive, very fixed-minded individual, and I hated those meetings. I would make excuses for why this wasn't there and why that wasn't there. I would come up with the most ridiculous reasons as to why our accounts didn't balance. I would defend all my team like they were my own family if the finger was pointed at them, and really just not be very open and receptive to feedback. And that was one of our biggest limiters as an organization, and certainly my own growth as an owner of a business was that I just wasn't open to hearing opinions of others. Here I created my own gym, 4 years and didn't have any guidance. Like, why should I listen to you now? And that was really my mindset, which is just crazy looking back on it. But it's very, very, very thankful and grateful for my parents stepping in at that point in time. And essentially that was a first dose of professionalism that Coastal Fitness ever had to deal with. So from there, we outsourced our accounting to an external company, who were basically, we would send them through our accounts every month. So at least it still wasn't great, but it was better than what myself and Fulton were doing. Fulton still worked his ass off. We all still worked our asses off, didn't hire anyone else. That was essentially our team. We had some local front desk staff who, bless them, worked really, really hard as well and were really sweet. And that was essentially the first year of Coastal Fitness in our old facility. The team then started to grow. So then we then started to have some interest from people who were already coaching in Hong Kong, and some of our members who had an interest and wanted to be a part of what we were doing. And so you can probably guess by now what my interview process was like.
Just your friends.
Yeah, it was, it was, we're really damn busy right now. We need more coaches. And, our next hires then came through our membership. Emma Chan, who's still with us today, I think she'd done her fundamentals, and I honestly think, I might get this wrong, but within her first month of being a member, I'm pretty sure she was offered a job based on the fact that she was teaching Les Mills classes in a Fitness First or a California Fitness. She seemed to like CrossFit. why don't I give her a job? So, I sat down with Emma and said, would you like to be a part of what we're doing here? She was like, yeah, I'd love to. Sure. Thank you. So there we have our next employee. We had another guy, Jamie, who's someone I played rugby with, a great guy as well. He joined the organization. We had Sophie, again, one of our clients, who was just a good athlete. Why not give her a job? Never coached in her life. She's a dancer by background, but seemed to pick up movements pretty quickly. I think you'll be a great coach. So after that first year running the organization between 5 of us, we then started acquiring a lot of people very, very fast. So I think, we went from 5 to, I think at one point having a team of between 10 to 12. Pretty much all of that being coaches. Poor old Fulton still running the organization just by himself. And I think that really is where a lot of the problems started to occur. I remember reading, I'm gonna get this wrong, but I've listened to it on a podcast, read it in a book somewhere, but about the growth of an organization. But it's like every 3 employees is where you start to run into teething problems with the organization. So when you go from 3 to 6, from 6 to 9, from 9 to 12, I don't know where that might be a little bit off. But I certainly could resonate with that. The first 3 was a breeze, and then we got to 6. It started to get more challenging, and then when we started to get to the 9s and 12s, it was a shit show. And that's probably a good time for you to interject.
Okay, so now you're at a team of 11 with 1 operation staff, right? You're 1 year in and you have this huge team, and you're obviously still the leader. Is that not the leader, but you're the general manager, you're the founder, you're everything.
The responsibility is most certainly on me to make sure that we're moving in the right direction, is the way we can put it. Yes.
I just have to put a huge disclaimer that I don't know how you paid your rent every month.
And I don't know how I paid my rent every month.
And I'm assuming salaries were still out of trust at this point. I don't even know 100%. How you collected membership fees or anything, but okay. Did you even have systems?
Systems is something I've learned recently. Yes, so systems did not exist back in the day. So okay. everything was based on, Fulton was the guy who was checking people in, checking people out. Now Fulton wasn't always there because we were making them work 12-hour shifts. So if Fulton wasn't there, people wouldn't get checked in and checked out. So money would go missing all the time. But again, as long as I was checking every month and it was kind of the same, then we're good.
So clearly there came a point where you were like, okay, Fulton cannot be my main operation staff, because I'm 100% believe that your product and your service and your coaching was doing extraordinarily well. Otherwise you wouldn't be paying your rent every month. Like, you had people paying. So at one point, did you realize that you had to balance this amazing product with an actual functioning, amazing business? And what did you do to solve that? Or what mistake did you learn that you had to then create a solution for?
Yeah. So actually the biggest turning point for us was hiring Nicola. Nicola, who until recently, just relocated to Singapore, is now our business admin manager. She was our general manager for a good number of years. And where the decision to hire Nick came from, I remember sitting down at numerous board meetings with my family and the rest of the board, and would say, guys, like, I am so close to just like capitulating. Like I'm like, my seams are breaking and I really don't think I can handle this anymore. And the outlook was, well, the business is still making money. Like, Ed, you just got to keep on going. And month after month, I'd say, okay, just another month. Like, you can keep this up, you can keep it going. And what I started to see was, the business crumbling in other areas as well. Yes, you talked about having a great product. The product, in its essence was good, but, there were also a lot of issues that did also start to come out of our organization, like a lack of transparency, a lack of honesty, the creation of like cliques and, honoring performance-based people and not honoring general population, like unpaid, not chasing up payments, unprofessionalism, all these things start to emerge as an organization. And I remember at one point our group class program dropping to about 60 members. And, having hovered at 80 to 100, that was a massive, massive red flag to me. we'd put so much emphasis on wanting to work with individual clients and, performance-based athletes that people had lost trust in our group program. And at the end of the day, the group program is what drives your business, especially in your group class organization you've built, and you've committed to this lease based on the fact that you're going to be running a group class program. When you lose that, that's a pretty big problem. And so, I would sit down with Fulton and just sometimes just want to cry at, the state that the business was in and how much I had on my plate. And I was just so overwhelmed. I was probably not a very nice person to be around in those years. Was constantly like, I was constantly breaking and constantly like just very fired up, and would be very emotional and respond emotionally rather than rationally. Would rub people up the wrong way within my own team, purely just out of frustration. And so, I eventually one day, I remember at a board meeting, I said, okay, like, I'm making the call now. I'm going to hire a general manager. Like, I can't do it anymore. And I said, I know it looks good on the outside. What you guys see as a board and as a team looks like it's all running smoothly, but like my own well-being right now is like at wit's end. And if it goes on any longer, there were days where I thought about just leaving the business altogether and just doing my own thing, or just, I don't know, flying to Thailand and just living in a silent retreat for 6 months so I didn't have to do any of this, So I basically went out on my own journey to try and find someone. And lo and behold, I went within our membership once again. Nick was a member. She was a personal training client of mine. Had also been in our group program, had been a part of SMAC, the same as Babs and Lottie, actually, who's, now one of my coaches. And I knew Nick. I don't know why I thought of Nick. She'd worked in human relations. That was her job. She was working within a school, so nothing really related to fitness. But I just always thought Nick had this, like, this, I don't know, like this motherly wisdom that she carried about her. And I thought, she's been in the business circles. She was working for an events marketing company before that. So I thought, she just has these skills. And I sat down with her for coffee, around the corner from the gym. And I basically said, like, I'm struggling. I'm really, really struggling, and I need help. And I don't really know where to take the business now. I know that I can deliver a fantastic service, and I know I have a good team of people who believe in what we're doing, but it's just a shit show. And that was probably the first time I'd like been actually open and vulnerable with someone to say that, like, actually it looks great on the outside, but I'm actually kind of out of control right now. And telling that to someone who's actually a member at the time is actually really hard as well. But this was kind of purely out of desperation. So it took a lot of convincing to the board, because hiring general manager isn't cheap. And probably the reason we existed so well and done so well was that our costs were really low, because we didn't really take on any staff costs. I wasn't even taking a salary. I was just still paying myself based on the coaching hours I did. Chris wasn't paid a whole amount of money. And other than that, we didn't really have any staff that weren't taking a commission-based salary. So, when Nick came on, that was the first time that I really saw, oh, wow, like, it makes a difference to have people in the right places doing things that they're actually passionate about. Nick was interested in business. She was interested in business law. And I was like, I couldn't think of anything worse than having to read and learn about business law. Nick would be meticulous about looking at the numbers and the accounts and asking questions. And I'd done the bare minimum with spreadsheets for the 5-6 years before that. And so, what Nick, aside from all the amazing work that she did with the organization in building systems and creating a direction, and, finally having someone that I could bounce ideas off who could actually help bring those ideas to fruition. That was the first time that I started to really see the importance of investing, not just in a coaching team, but in an operations team as well. And so, yeah, that was, a massive turning point for us.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that when you're starting a business, that especially for you, like, probably the culture was getting not what you wanted it to be, and the coaches were not exactly up to your standards because you were spreading yourself too thin. You were trying to do everything and be everything, even if it wasn't what you had a huge interest in. And I think, just like you said, being open and vulnerable to accepting that, yes, it is an expense, but it's an expense that will then take your business into a whole other direction and like be more successful than it currently is. It's something that I think people who are trying to run their own business need to understand. And like, I also want to get into the you not paying your own salary thing, because I know that's different now. Like, in order to create a business, everyone, like, we even read about it, like you need to be able to pay all the expenses properly and still have a thriving business. And I think those are all learnings that Nick and you guys all worked together, and was super important once you started to realize that the operations and the running of a business is just as important as whatever service and product that you're putting out. And I think that's something that is not super clear in a lot of gym businesses. Everyone thinks that the person who runs the business is the general manager, is the head programmer, is everything at the top, and they're the last person to get paid. They think that I need to pay everyone, and once that's paid, I'll take whatever's left, which is not the way it should be run if you want a sustainable long-term business. And I think that's something that I've noticed in Coastal that's just amazing.
So I think just on that, it's like, well, I think a lot of people would say, well, why didn't you do this all sooner? And I think that's twofold. I'd read a lot of books on running businesses who all said that you can't be in your business, or you need to work on your business, which is like, you can't be stuck in the day-to-day runnings. I had a business mentor that I paid for, who, when she looked at the hours that I was working, both, coaching and running the business from an admin standpoint, she was like, you've got to stop this now. Like, there's no way your business can exist. And so I'd heard it from a million different sources, but, in the moment, you think you're invincible, and you're like, well, I can do it. And look at me succeed. Like, I don't know. It was never about proving people wrong, but it was more that, like, I just loved the challenge of hard work, and I thought I could do it. And it didn't make sense to me to pay someone more money, to lose more money in your organization, to spend more money, which is then going to move you forward. That just hadn't resonated with me. And I think, like a lot of things I've learned in my life, is that I don't learn until it actually happens to me. And that's always like the greatest teacher in life, I think, is actually taking a risk, trying something, and then realizing after the fact that it wasn't the best call to make, and how can you learn and how can you grow from it. And so, that, like, I think a lot of business owners, not just in the fitness business, but just a lot of business owners in general, like, they genuinely want their businesses to do well. They want them to survive. And we have the dreams of these businesses flourishing. But, at the time, we don't have big pockets. We don't have these unlimited pockets where we can just pay whoever we want to come into an organization. And so something that I'm still a big believer in is, like, don't hire until you need to hire, which is like, have you done everything within your power, within the team that you have, to build the greatest business possible, or to do as much work as possible, whatever it is that your business is doing. And when you can't, when you're really stretched and you're at your seams, that's what you make your next hire. And somewhere within, years 5 to 6, 5 to 7, I lost that, because the business started by only hiring when we needed to hire. And then somewhere in the middle, it became just hiring because I just thought we needed to hire. And the business grew too fast. It grew too fast. We had too many coaches. The coaches, in all fairness, and didn't have direction, because I didn't have the time to give it to them. They didn't have clarity on what their goal was. They didn't have clarity on what their mission was. There weren't values. There wasn't structure. There wasn't systems. And understandably, when I put myself in their shoes, I know I can completely understand why they'd be frustrated or angry, or not think that Coastal Fitness was a happy, enjoyable place to work. And so, that all comes from just hiring too fast and growing too quickly. And so, where did we go from that? Was that, this is, probably a big year of my own learning and investment in my own self-development, not just as a business owner, but, emotionally and spiritually, I guess, as well, trying to work out who I was at the core and what needed to improve, and taking action on those things. Was that then, we started to then release people who weren't a part of the organization, who didn't feel really belong there. Part of that was people left because, out of frustration, or out of the fact that it just wasn't the right place for them. Part of it was asking people to leave, or, making people redundant. And then basically, rebuilding the business. It was almost like a rebuilding of the business. And, part of this was when we had a general manager was like, looking really at the core of the business and who we wanted to be. And, we had loyal followers. We had people that, could see through all the shit and all the craziness and through all the lack of structure and through all the lack of systems. And, like, would still, and so thankful for it, stay a part of Coastal Fitness and what we were doing. And a lot of those people are still here with us today, which is just amazing. But essentially had to go from building back up from 60 members to where we are now, which is over 160 members, just in our group class program. So yeah, crazy times.
Yeah, so let's go from now we know all this hiring process, and like you said, you just grew too fast, and mostly the people you were hiring necessarily did not have the right experience for what you needed. Mostly were just friends, didn't really go through an interview process or anything. You didn't even know if they were aligned with your goals and the company's goals, right? And now you have a general manager, you freed up more time for yourself to do the things that you're actually wanting to do. And from there, this is where you realized about the culture, right? And about the people that you were with, just because you were spending more time in it, you were trying to develop them and create those connections. And so I think this year probably, well, I just came this year, but I think this year has been a massive change in the business and everything that's going on. And I've also seen a massive change in your hiring process and deciding what and who exactly we need to fill certain roles in order to get the business where we all, and especially yourself, want it to be, right? So I think we can talk about this hiring process, and as well as the team that you've created based on the goals that you want for the company.
So the hiring process is honestly probably the hardest part of running an organization. At the end of the day, people are what makes our organization. Yes, service, yes, systems, yes, the back end, but it's really the people that makes us, I think, who we are and what makes us unique. So the hiring process is still something that's a work in progress. I feel like I'm closer than I ever had been before. We are closer than we ever have been before at getting this thing right. But the old adage, which is you should always fire fast and hire slow. I remember hearing that probably kind of 3 years into running my organization, and it never really resonated with me until I started to realize that you spend all this time in a hiring process, and then your people would show up on their first day and you'd realize that they're just not the right person for the organization. And then what would happen, that would be 6 months or 1 year of having the wrong people in your organization before you just finally have to let them go, or you part ways in some way or another. And, the whole idea of hiring slow is like, that is a lot of time, money, energy, and emotion that's invested into someone who doesn't end up being a long-term part of your organization. And so, how do you then go about getting the right people? Well, I really think before you even look at the hiring process, you have to go back to mission and the values of your organization. What is it that you're trying to achieve as a business? And can you articulate that clearly? And does everyone in your organization know what the mission is? And, really until probably the last 12 months, I've never really been able to clearly articulate what the mission of Coastal Fitness has been. And so if you'd asked every member within the organization, well, what is the goal? You probably get 12 to 15 different answers. And that's not what you want. You want everyone within your team to be singing the same song, to be saying the same message, regardless of who it is that they speak to. And so, having a mission is really, really important, because the mission then drives the values. Now, your values are the things, the basically the behaviors that you and the personnel within your organization live by. Now, what we've found is that the values of Coastal Fitness and what we've now created that we all really believe in, which is called the Coastal six different values, is actually now had carryover into our clientele and our community as well. They're also values that our community believe in and think is important. And, I've always said coaches attract like-minded clients, but I didn't really know why. And now I start to see that, well, people are attracted to personalities, they're attracted to values, they're attracted to many, many things, but values is just one of those really important things. And now, we're not afraid to talk about what those 6 values are. And so I think once you have your mission and you have your values, it makes the hiring process a little bit easier, because you now know what you're hiring for, and you now know what you're hiring based on. And so I think previously the hiring process was always about a CV and credentials. You know, what experience do you have? What courses have you done? What certifications have you done? And that would be the main guiding factor as to whether or not we hire someone. And you know, here's the thing with interviews, and you know, we've probably both done interviews ourselves, interviewing for different organizations, is that people are really fucking good at interviewing because they know exactly what they want, what you want to hear. And every organization wants to hear the same things. I'm passionate, I work hard, you know, I have a growth mindset, I have great experience. You know, everyone says the same thing. So it's like, how are you supposed to find someone, you know, find the right person through an interview process? What's made it even harder for us is that a lot of our hires come from overseas, because we find it very challenging to find the right fit for what we're looking for in Hong Kong, and you know, which is just a whole nother challenge to the hiring process. And so, you know, in the most recent round of hiring that we've done, we took a very different approach to it. And you've been a big part of this process as well, Izzy. You know, the first part was clearly defining exactly what it is that we're looking for in a coach. So it's not just we're looking for passionate health and fitness coaches who want to be a part of a team, which is basically what we would said in all our other hires. Now it's, we know we're looking for coaches with experience who've had success with nutritional coaching. We've had success in like rehab and rehabilitation of like existing injuries. They've existed and worked in a CrossFit facility teaching CrossFit group classes, you know. So as soon as you become a lot more specific in what you're looking for, you know, the net that you're casting out becomes a lot narrower. So you start to get less applications, but you get people who actually tick the boxes. And so that was massive game changer to us. So rather than being broad and general and having to sift through, you know, 100 different applications, which means the likelihood of you getting the wrong person is much, much higher. Now being much more specific from the start is going to mean that the chances of you having the right person is much, much greater. So that was step one. Once we had that short list of people, we had all those applications. Round two was we sent them, I guess it was kind of like a questionnaire, or it was a form they had to fill out. And this form was all about values. So the idea of the questions was trying to understand, you know, what is at the core of this person? You know, what is their reason for why they want to coach? What was their original story as to why they got into coaching? What are their unique abilities? What are they really good at? What are their values in life? What are their goals in life? What do they deem to be the most important things to them in their life? And so, because we have a set of values and we have a mission as an organization, the next part is, well, looking at the values and the missions of individuals and seeing if they're going to match up with what we're trying to achieve. From there, you know, we narrowed it down a little bit further. So now we're on to kind of our third stage of the interview process. And by this point, there's been no face-to-face contact, no conversations, no phone calls, no Zoom interviews. The next stage now was really honing in on trying to understand what they actually had from a skill set standpoint. And so this for us was case studies. So, you know, they had to complete a number of different individual case studies based upon, you know, a client that I'd made up. So basically, how would you go about assessing and how would you go about coaching this client? And, you know, they had to provide a lot of information there. And then they also had to film themselves coaching a class. Because it's really important that we know that someone has the skills to be able to coach a group of people, because it's a big part of what our job entails. From there, we narrowed it down a little bit further again, and that's where we first started our interview process, where we're now sitting down over a Zoom conversation and basically just trying to get to know the person. We know that they have, by this point, the skill set. We know that they have the credentials. We know that they have the right values and the mission. And that just makes that interview process so much easier, because you know you're speaking to probably someone who's more than likely going to be the right person. Now it's just about finding out a little bit more and just kind of crossing the T's and dotting your I's. And then from there, you know, there's then, I guess, like an internal conversation that has to happen with us as a team to make sure that that person is right. We then do background checks, we do reference checks, we do everything to make sure that we're definitely not missing anything. And then there, you know, we're finally in a position to potentially offer a contract. Now, does that mean that you're going to get the right person? No, it still definitely does not mean you're going to get the right person to your organization, but it's certainly, you know, a much more thorough process that means that hopefully when this person does come, they're going to be the right fit for the organization.
Yeah, I think it was a huge learning process for us and for yourself, seeing yourself trying to understand this process, because you are so interested in hiring the right people, just because it's been a huge change and it's been really hard for you because you are as a leader, you still are friends with everyone in your staff. And it's been hard personally and emotionally, just having to like see if people are actually the right fit for where you want to go, to let people go, to hear people wanting to leave. And so I think that's what made this hiring process so important to you, to try to get right, even though we might not get it right, like at least we're one step closer to doing it. And so I kind of just want to end by talking about like your team now and explaining to people the team that you've created. And I also think something that has been really great with you getting the right team or taking steps to making the right team is just the amount of time that you've set aside and you've been able to set aside for yourself to actually work on the projects that are the reason why you started this fitness business in the beginning, which I think a lot of people who start a business, they lose sight of, and they lose the ability to do that because they're like what you did, they take on everything and they forget why they started it and they don't get the opportunity to do it. And I think creating a team that enables you to do what you're good at and they do what they're good at is just so essential to keeping a long-term business successful.
Yeah. So I think, you know, within our coaching team, we have an amazing coaching team now. An exercise that we did earlier in the year when we had a lot of time together during COVID was to talk about our unique abilities. And the unique abilities are basically things that we really, really love doing, things that like time is lost when we're doing them, we're super passionate about. But also in talking about unique abilities, we talked about the things we didn't like doing. And so that was a really interesting process because as a coaching team, we just laid it out on the floor for each other. Hey, these are the things that I really, really love doing. And these are the things that I kind of love doing. These are the things that I don't like doing, but I know I have to do it. And these are the things that I really, really hate doing. And from that, you know, I got an amazing picture of, wow, why would you want in your organization people doing things that they really don't like doing? Yes, there's a point like in the early days of Coastal Fitness where you just have to do shit that you don't want to do because you don't have any other option. But as a business grows and you know you have more manpower and you can start to have the ability to hire the right people, you really want people in positions where they're doing things they're really passionate and fired up about. And if you can create an organization where every member of your team is doing something that they're fired up about and brings them fulfillment and satisfaction and enjoyment, like you're already on a right path to building a much greater, stronger team. And you're never going to do that unless you can have that openness and that honesty and that vulnerability to be able to share those things. And I remember a lot of our coaches were a bit apprehensive about sharing what they didn't like, but when they did it, I was like, well, we need to stop you doing fundamentals. We need to stop you doing group classes. Why do you keep saying yes to personal training clients if you don't like doing it? You know, why are you spending time doing this admin stuff where you don't like doing it? You know, we have a team of people who want to do those things. So let's start giving this person more of that, this person more of that. I realized in that process what I was doing that wasn't bringing me fulfillment and started making changes as well. And you know what, like in that process, in our coaching team alone, you know, we now have a bunch of really unique individuals who all have their own things that they really, really love doing. And it's judgment free. Like you're not a less able coach because you prefer doing group classes versus one-on-one coaching. You're not superior because you want to do remote coaching and write individual programs online versus training private groups. You know, it's like as an organization, these are all services that we believe in that fit within our mission. We just got to get the right people doing it now. And like make sure that the things that you're doing in your week, in your day, aren't things that don't bring you satisfaction and fulfillment. So, you know, that's it with the coaching team. That's a massive mindset shift because, you know, previously I think as business owners, we have this preconceived idea as to what we think the ladder of growth looks like for a coach. You start as a group class coach, then you coach individuals, and then you start writing remote clients or remote programs, and then you start writing a group program, and then you start doing coaching education. It does not everyone wants that journey. That might be the journey that I wanted as a coach, but it's not what every coach wants. And so that's, I think, something that's really unique now. And it's funny because you look at our coaching team now, it's not the biggest coaching team Coastal Fitness has ever had. In fact, I think it's, you know, it's probably on the smaller side. We have, I think, is it seven full-time coaches? 7 full-time coaches. We've been at the point where we've had 11 full-time coaches. Yet the amount of productivity and work that gets done between the 7 people we have is exponentially more than when we had 11 people who didn't really care about what they were doing, who were doing jobs that didn't bring them fulfillment, who were there just making up the numbers. So I think that just goes to show the importance of having the right team. And then I think something that really, really differentiates us from other CrossFit gyms, especially, but I guess just fitness organizations, and I guess the niche fitness space, is like the size of our operations team. When I tell people how big our operations team, people are blown away. Our operations team is almost as big as our coaching team. You know, we have 2 full front desk full-time staff. We have a business development manager. We have a business admin manager. We have a full-time in-house accountant. We have someone who works on our merchandise line. We have someone now who's working on our media, who's kind of in-house shooting, video creation. Like, that is a massive team. But, it's so essential, seeing now what we're able to achieve as a business, both in-house with Coastal Fitness, but online with the podcast, online with the process programming. And we have like these amazing things always rolling through the pipeline that together as a team we're thinking of, and these new projects and these new services that we want to get out there. None of that will be possible without an admin team, without that back office operations team who's basically, making everything come to life. I still sometimes look at it and think we need more. We need more people in our operations team, which is crazy when it's a coaching organization is essentially what we're at or what we are. So yeah, just a completely different look and feel of an organization compared to where we were.
Yeah, I think that's great. There's definitely a lot of things that I didn't know about your journey and how Coastal Fitness has grown, and just how you went from, like, if this was Seesaw, nobody can see me. They're listening with their ears and not their eyes.
Hands are pointing towards themselves like a seesaw. Continue.
Well, like a scale, right? And before it was coaches balance, and you had 1 operation staff. You had like 8 and 1, and now we're almost like equal balance. And it just shows how much importance it is of like having support no matter what the business is. Even it is, like you said, a coaching business. Like, you need that support and people who believe in you guys, people who want you to succeed, and people who do the things that not all coaches want to do, because they're mostly there to coach, right? So I think there's definitely been a lot of learning, and I hope that people who are wanting to run a business or in the middle of running a business have learned something from this episode, and have learned something from all the mistakes but also really good successes that you made. Like, I cannot believe for 4 years of your business you were doing everything. I actually am blown away. I've never seen you do accounting or memberships, and now I know that you can, so I'll give it to you.
Well, now you know that I actually can't, and that's why I don't do it anymore.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing it and for having me on this podcast.
Yes.
Is there anything you'd like to end with?
No, I think I just think it's I always find talking about business tough, because I think a lot of times, certainly for myself, I like to listen to business podcasts where people are giving succinct anecdotes on how to hire someone, or how to grow a business, or how to scale your services. And I never feel like I'm very business savvy when it comes to that kind of conversation. And I think all I really have is just experience. And as I said, and as you said there, learning through a lot of failures. So I think, if you are a business owner, especially in the fitness business space, or you're someone who's in a position of leadership, and you're looking for some guidance, or just a conversation, or just shoot some ideas across and see if you're on the right tracks, and I'm always more than happy to kind of lend an ear and see if I can provide any useful experience or information with you, because I certainly know that I never reached out for help enough as a growing businessman who had my own business, and I wish I did. And I think partly because of that, it was that I just didn't have anyone to reach out to. So this is me saying that if you're this person and this resonates with you, please do reach out to me. Even if you're not in the fitness business space, I'm sure there's a lot more carryover than you think when it comes to running a business. But Izzy, you were an amazing host. Thank you for hosting me on my own podcast. It's been cool to have the roles reversed. But no, thank you, Izzy, and I love everything that you do for Coastal Fitness, and yeah, you're awesome to have on the team.
Thanks. Night.
Bye, everyone.